live. All right, we are on air, and welcome to Paleo Bytes. We actually have a co-host this week, which is awesome. Say hello, Tess.
Hello, Tess.
And as our actual guest this week, who is now snickering, we have Anton.
Yay.
Anton,
Yes.
nice to have you.
Thank you.
You are the host of the Atheist Edited Show and the Games Experiment, which I have to admit I kept misreading and thought it was Game Sex Experiment.
Everybody does that, and it's one of those things where I did not realize it until long after it was way too late. I was like, son of a bitch. So now I have to try to get Mercedes Carrera on so that it can be that. But I haven't even contacted her yet, so.
I think she froze.
Feedback. So,
Yeah.
like, major feedback.
Okay.
I apologize. Can you restate what you were saying?
Oh, just that. Yeah, I hadn't considered that until it was like 10 episodes in, and someone pointed it out, and I was like, God damn it! And so now I have to have I forgot her name already. Carrera. Mercedes Carrera on, because then it can be Game Sex Experiment. But yeah, I actually think it's a much better name. I'm just like, God damn it.
The town that I used to live in, there was a Barnes Exterminating. But the back of their pickup trucks, every time I read it, I thought I was reading Barnes Sex Terminating.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, it's unfortunate, but I'm kind of owning it now. I'm like, you know what? If that's what brings people back, then fine.
That is true. And Tess, you have the pooper scoopers in your area.
What do I have? What? Huh?
When I was up there, you apparently have a truck that comes around and scoops up poop from the neighborhoods.
Do we? Where was I?
Yeah, you do.
I like out walking.
I have no idea.
I've never seen this thing. Don't pay attention to
Maybe.
very much.
I don't know. At any rate, that's okay. Anton.
Yes. Oh, sorry.
You, as your job, review caption files for online streaming service. So does that mean that when people start making the text for subtitles, that's what you're reviewing, or?
Kind of. We get files from people, and we basically just slap them onto the video and make sure that everything lines up, and kind of make sure that there aren't any major misreads or mishears. You'd be shocked at how many there are. Make sure there are no weird characters. But I really hope no one discovers this secret, because I make a living doing the single world's easiest thing. It takes no skill, and any monkey could do it, and they pay me a decent living and full benefits and all that shit. It's really quite remarkable. Every time I get a paycheck, I'm sure someone's going to call me and say, no, we were just kidding.
I'm a monkey, and if you need another monkey, I will be your monkey, because I'm looking for your job as well. So.
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, there are offices. I won't say the business on air, but there are offices in several cities, East Coast, West Coast, Northwest. So it is possible to, and we're apparently aggressively expanding still, but I think our department specifically is not. But yeah, it's crazy that I get to do this for a living. I mean, every time I'm like, wow, I have more money than I have ever had, because I'm making sure words appear on the screen at the right time. It's like, okay, cool.
So.
Oh, everybody went blank. You all still there?
I'm here.
Really upset at Google Hangouts right now.
Yeah, I know.
I think we're all still here.
I'm here.
But both of you have turned into robots for me.
I'm not a robot.
Well, I see both of you just fine.
Well, I know you're not actually technically a robot, but the audio and video is lagging.
Oh. Maybe if I speak slower.
Yeah, now you definitely don't sound like a robot at all.
I don't know what's going on. Um, the nature of doing live shows, right?
Yeah. If only we're Fox.
That
So, have you noticed at all in your actual job that your now lack of belief has posed any issues for it at all?
Two things on that. One, no, because I'm very lucky that I live in LA and you throw a rock, you hit a dozen atheists. They may not all be out like, talking about it, but it's just I've been very lucky culturally, growing up in the Portland area too. I just didn't really encounter much resistance, and I've heard so many stories from people where they're like, "Oh, I don't dare say anything because like I'll be run out of town on a rail." That's just never been my experience, and I sympathize with other experiences, but I can't empathize because it's completely foreign to me. So I'm very, very lucky. The other side of that, though, is that I don't know. I'm not very social at work. I kind of just do my thing and go home because I don't care because I'm old enough that I don't care. So I haven't actually bothered to learn about people's feelings on this stuff because, yes, I'll say it again, I don't care. So I have been hesitant to wearing certain T-shirts by certain foundations named after certain chairs of certain departments in Cambridge. Not because I would feel ashamed, but because I'm just a little trepidatious about how people would react. Um, like my favorite one, I don't know if you guys have seen it. It's one of the more famous ones, and it's kind of close to me because I have friends who are of the ilk. It's the one that says, I think on the back. Oh no, it says on the front, we are all Africans, and the A is stylized red, and then on the
Right.
back, science tells us that we all came out of Africa. Bible tells us we didn't, and I believe science. Because as we all know, racism is based on a false social construct. And actually, well, not to get on too much of a tangent, but I really don't like the fact that we still use the word race because now we know that it's not a real thing. Um, but it's so locked into our culture that we can't. It takes longer to say ethnicity than it does to say race. But that's my favorite shirt. But even that one, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if I want to deal with it. So, social pressure. What can you do?
I can understand that. So you, in the information that you gave me, you stated that you have an Episcopalian and Unity background. Is
Yes.
Unity the same thing, or is that a different? Can you explain what those two are?
Oh, sure.
follow-up
Actually,
question to
Episcopalian
that
is.
would be-
Oh, what?
a follow-up question for that would be, why the hell did that religion choose to call itself Episcopalian, which is a difficult thing to pronounce?
Well, actually, I think I know the answer to both of those. I didn't realize this until recently, but the only reason Episcopalian is called Episcopalian is because at the time of its founding, because it was physically outside of England, it could not be called Anglican. That was like an Anglican rule. So there's really no functional difference between the Episcopalian communion and the Anglican. And in fact, I think if you are an Episcopalian and you go to England and you want to be married in the Anglican Church, they're just like, okay, whatever, and vice versa. Though don't quote me on that one. I'm not sure if that's exactly right. So I don't know how they picked the name Episcopalian, but since it's etymologically related to bishop and episcopal and all that stuff, they probably like, that looks good. But yeah, that's it. That's why it is Episcopalian. There's no other fancy reason. It's pretty disappointing.
Thank you, though, because I've always wondered, and I'm happy right now.
Well, I wonder too, because when I was a kid, I didn't really know what the fuck was going on, and when I was a teenager and I had opportunity to go to Catholic masses and did, I was like, what's the difference between this and what I don't get it. And I asked, and my parents were like, look over there. And I was like, well, that's not very helpful, you guys. I want to know this stuff. So, but your question about Unity, wait, did you ask about Unity, or did you just
Yes.
say it? Okay. Okay, so Unity is a bit more complicated, and I'll try to give you the shorter version. So I think it was in the mid-19th century. We'll just pretend that I'm right. This couple decided that they didn't really like the conventions of most Christianity, like, the mid-19th century shit that was going on, like the Mormons and the Millerites and stuff. So I guess they just sort of decided that they didn't like things like hell or the devil or original sin or any of that shit, but they did like being in the club. So they founded the Association of Unity Churches, and then it kind of picked up again in the 60s due to the same reasons, like, people wanted to throw away things like dogma and, shit, what do you call it? Just ritual and stuff. And so what it became was, and you can look this up on Wikipedia, what it became was something called New Age, I think. Shit, now I can't remember. New Thought, New Age. So all of the stereotypes that you've heard about hippies, dangling crystals and having pyramid candles, it is all completely true. That's what we were. This weird, like, mishmash of Eastern-ish ideas, like reincarnate. I mean, basically any kooky pseudo-spiritual idea that you can come up with, we were kind of okay with. So reincarnation, past lives, aura readings, crystal healing. Crystal healing was a big one. This was all stuff that was treated with respect as if it were factually true, and not really questioned, but not really, like, it wasn't doctrinated. They didn't say, according to our scriptures, this is true. It wasn't like that. It was just, hey, this sounds neat. Let's go with this. So that's kind of what, like, about 10 years of my life was. It was just this weird kooky bullshit. But to be honest, how is that any different from the weird kooky bullshit of taking a piece of bread and pretending it's flesh? So,
which is my background.
Well, hey, there you go. So only that has a bit more history.
Yeah. So, I mean, you obviously realize now that a lot of what you were being taught when you were younger is kind of woo-woo.
Yeah, which I love. I love that word, by the way.
When did you start realizing this, and how did the coming out to family go, if you even have?
Oh yeah, I have. I long since like I said about working. I felt free to come out, and I don't know that I ever really officially did to my dad. I just sort of started acting as if, and that was the end of it. Like, he never said anything, I never said anything. We just didn't care. My mom was a little different. She was a bit more protective of things like faith in God and stuff, and she actually said to me once, "I'm afraid that you don't believe in God anymore," which was ironic because at the time I absolutely did. And I thought, I was kind of offended by her question. It was like, I'm sorry, when have I said that I don't? But then about a year or two later, I didn't. So, okay, so there's two key experiences out of many that I can tell you that will make some sense. One is, I don't know if you guys remember Prop 8 in California as of 2008. Well,
Yes,
in case so Oregon had an equivalent called Prop 9, and it basically did the exact same thing, only much worse. It was calling for bans of books if they were written by gay authors or about gay characters or whatever. It was horseshit, and this is about 92, I'm not sure. It was a while ago. And I was deep into my church, and we were very fond of telling ourselves that we were right and fundamentalists were wrong and all that good stuff. And I had actually not really, I had read parts of the Bible, but not a lot of Old Testament. And there was a slogan that started popping up on bumper stickers, which was Sodom and Gomorrah voted yes on voted no on number 9. Now, I had heard the name Sodom and Gomorrah, and I kind of knew a little, like, I had the vague, like, oh, that's a bad thing in my head, but I didn't really know much else. So someone said Leviticus 18:22, and I was like, all right, let's see what this shit says. Now, remember, I should have given more context. So in Unity, it's all about love, period. Like, there's no hell that we're taught. We're not taught about the devil. We're not taught any of that stuff. So the whole notion of being punished and sent to, it just doesn't exist. We don't live in a bubble. Like, we know that it does exist in other places, but we're basically told, like, oh, that's crap. Why would a loving God do that? If you're wondering, well, what about the whole evil thing and children dying of leukemia and stuff? We just didn't address it, so I have no answer for that. But okay, so what I was told was, read this thing. So I read it, and I was bowled over. I was like, wait, why would God give a fuck about, like, especially the God I believe in? Why would the God I believe in give a fuck about where people put their penises and buttholes? And I don't get it. Like, I don't understand why this would be important to him. And the fact that it said, like, their abomination, I'm not quoting because I don't have it memorized, but that their blood will be upon them. I was like,
Right.
That sounds kind of like what we would now call victim blaming, which is also weird. It's like, why? Okay, so God first doesn't like this, and second thinks it's punishable by death, and if it is punished by death, it's the fault of the. Isn't that? I don't think that's actually technically accurate. It would maybe be that the crime would be on them, but the actual killing part would. I was just like, what the hell? And the thing is, I was having major cognitive dissonance because I had been told that the Bible was the most brilliant book ever written because it could be interpreted in so many ways. Turns out that's absolute horseshit. That's actually why it's not a brilliant book, but I didn't know this at that time. So so that was a huge thing. I had never really encountered that kind of bigotry, except for very vague reference. And I know to most people this sounds really crazy, but I simply wasn't exposed to it. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, remember all that woo that we were taught was totally cool. So when I was about a junior in high school, I had a class, Sunday school, not really different from anybody else's experience, except we weren't doing like Bible reading and stuff. We would just be told stuff. So the thing that we were told on this particular day was that everything, yes, literally everything, has a soul. So every molecule, every rock, every pebble, every planet, everything. And I don't know why, but that was a little bit too much for me. Like, I couldn't go that far. And I started making fun of it in class. I was like, wait, so the Earth has a soul? Like, wait, how do we even know this? Like, how would you Now, if you're wondering, well, why was God plausible to me and everything in the universe having a soul was not? I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know why I accept warp theory, but I can't accept mitochondrions in the blood in Star Wars. I don't know. Because I was exposed to the one before the other. I have no idea. So I get home, and my mom reports to me that my teacher was pretty upset, or my teachers were pretty upset because I've been very disruptive and, blah, blah, blah. And I kind of just threw it at her. I was like, well, this is what they were saying. Are you saying that that is correct? And she had this look on her face like she knew she couldn't directly go against what they said because then that would, then the whole thing collapses. But she also kind of knew that she couldn't support it either. So she was stuck there for what seemed like at least 10 minutes, even though it's probably only 3 seconds. And in that moment, I saw, oh, you people have no fucking idea what you're talking about. You're making this up as you go along, and you're usually on the same page when you have time to have the meeting beforehand to decide that you're on the same page. But when you don't, one of you makes up bullshit, and the other people go, wait, what? And that was kind of the big moment of doubt, because I was like, well, why? That was the thing. It was like, why the fuck am I listening to you? I mean, seriously, there is no basis of authority in any of this, and you're just and a minor one, and I'll finish this part is I didn't like going to church mainly because it was Sunday mornings, but besides that, I really liked it. I actually really did, and I tell this to Christians all the time. I loved church. It was fun. I had friends. It was great. Songs, dancing, hugging, girls paying attention to me. It was awesome. But one day I just didn't feel like going because it was like 9, and I'd stayed up doing, staring at the wall, and my dad was like, oh, you have to go. And I was like, why do I have to go? He's like, oh, you need it for your spiritual growth. And I was like, Dad, what is it? And again, I still believed at this point completely. But I was like, what does that mean? And he gave me this look, kind of like my mom's look earlier. Or he was like, it means stuff. I mean, and I could tell, like, he wasn't really prepared for that. It was supposed to be you show the curtain, and you say, don't look behind the curtain. And that was supposed to be the end of the discussion. And we didn't, the conversation ended there, but it really stuck with me. I was like, wait, why would this be a difficult question to answer? Just tell me. Why do we need this? It should, so.
Kill the curiosity.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to me what is socially acceptable to just present without challenge, and then when challenge arrives, how socially unacceptable that is, which is really fascinating to me my whole life. Like, it's perfectly okay to say things like gluten is harmful, and then when you're like, well, really, how do we know that? You know what? I don't eat gluten anymore, and I feel much better. Like, well, that can also be the placebo or nocebo effect. Do you know how that works? No, you know what? And I don't care. Like, okay, so are you concerned with your health or not? Because one could actually have an effect on it, and one couldn't, and we have no evidence of the one. Yeah, bleh.
I actually this is probably diverting in a totally random direction, but you mentioned the gluten thing. I actually personally stay away from gluten, but it's because of the fact that we do know that it causes inflammation, in particular in the joints, and I have arthritis.
Well,
And
arthritis is no fun, so.
no. So anything I can do that prevents the inflammation from getting worse.
Yeah, I understand.
But no, I see what you mean. It's the whole concept of taking something that we think we know a lot about, or we've been told repetitively, hey, this is the way it is, and then never actually investigating it. Which, Tess, I can imagine you view history the same way. We get taught a certain way in school, this president did this president did that, but then when you actually do bother to go look it up, there's a hell of a lot more information about them.
Well,
Yeah,
it's
like the cherry tree. Complete apocryphal bullshit.
it's also so. I mean, I think with history it's a bit different. It's also people don't care
Yeah.
history, and they don't. They should. They absolutely should, and they don't seem to care about like. I've had this conversation with a few people who say like, "Oh well, you can believe whatever you want to believe," and the people that I've talked to, it's very difficult to say, "Well, you can," but that means that like you may not be. If you're just randomly picking and choosing what to believe, you may not be. What's the tactful way to say this? That's not thoughtful. That's not mindful. That's not exercising the brain that either God gave you or the brain that evolved, whichever you. But the thing that bothers me more than the fact um, that it happens once or twice is that it's encouraged to happen. We
Yeah.
don't. We're encouraged, or a lot of people are encouraged not to. I guess I'm preaching to the choir, not to look into things, or just to stop there.
Right.
I don't know. I had a thought and then I spoke and it just went. So
Doe.
someone
It
else
happens
who's
to
more
me.
eloquent. Someone else who's more eloquent can take the floor now because I did not know myself very well at all. I'm gonna.
You've had a long day yelling at kids.
And
Speaking of kids,
let us not think of kids. I've been yelling at them all day.
well, Anton, do you have any? And if so, how are you raising them?
No, but secular.
Okay.
You're raising the children that you don't have secularly.
I would. I would probably. I haven't made up my mind about Santa Claus, but I would actually probably lean towards not doing that shit at all. Not necessarily avoiding it, but just, if a child says, "Hey, Daddy, are you Santa?" I would say yes, or I don't know. I'm not entirely decided on that one, and I respect that different people within a lack of belief feel different ways, but I don't really see the value of it, of lying to children intentionally. And actually, the tradition is not that old, so it's this weird respect for tradition that hasn't been around forever.
Right.
I mean, I don't know if you guys know the history, but I just happen to know that the way that we ideally or idealistically sort of have this notion of Christmas in our heads, that we're all, whenever people say, let's get back to the true meaning of Christmas, what they mean is what happened post Christmas Carol England, because the history of that was basically that there really wasn't any, at least not the way we think of it. And Dickens was like, hey, we should have something like this. So he basically made it up out of whole cloth. I mean, not 100%, of course, but he basically he created this image of this is what Christmas is supposed to be, and then after, because of the popularity of the book, it kind of happened. And then, Coca-Cola did their advertising campaign and so on and so forth. So this whole thing that mostly Republicans jump on, like, oh, we should, it shouldn't be about it was always about commerciality, always, period. It's horseshit to say otherwise. So, yeah, just
And
I don't see the point of like saying, you know, I want my child to experience it. It's like, why? Why not just make up anything then? I mean, seriously, like make up leprechauns and tell them that on St. Patrick's Day they'll leave you green cookies if you're good. It's made up, and there's no reason for it other than we like it.
if I had kids, and I do not intend to ever have kids, I would alert them to the fact that Christmas. This could sound so cheesy, but I mean, once they were old enough, like a lot of people go through a lot of pain in Christmas, and I learned that particularly this year.
Yeah,
Like,
that's true.
Christmas is a time to not. Hey kids, I'm not gonna buy a Christmas tree. Like, I'm not gonna give you a bunch of shit. We're gonna practice giving. I'm not. And I mean, that sounds so corny to me because everyone always says Christmas is about giving, but people, not people, we're focused on receiving a lot in this culture and in the holidays,
Yeah.
but
You'd rather be giving.
it's not just that I'd rather be like, oh hey, let's exchange gifts. It's about cultivating the desire and cultivating the awareness and the mindfulness of, in kids, somebody out there may be hurting, or somebody out there could use a hug, or could use some trinket or something, you know? I don't know, I went on a rant, sorry. I'm like, I should not be talking, it's so late.
No, you're fine. So, on the pulling back with the kids comment, you, Anton, you were brought up with the idea of crystal healing and whatnot, and for me personally, that is something that I will go on a 2-hour rant by myself.
Yeah.
Faith healing kind of, that makes me go a little nutty. But when you're out in California, there's a lot of anti-vaxxers out there.
Oh, fuck yes. And in Oregon, actually. I think Oregon is the highest in the country, I think.
Why did you have to bring anti-vax up?
He's in California.
I have no patience for that bullshit, and I rail against it every single time, and it really, really pisses me off that people pull it's my right to, you know, take care of my kids however I see fit card, because it's like, well, one, no, it's not. We have child services for that bullshit. You know, there are certain legal and moral standards that we as a culture have for a reason. Like, it's, you know, there's the cults out there that beat their children, and, you know, when we find out about it, usually we go in, well, unless they're Catholics, because, you know, we don't want to fuck with them because they've got 1.5 billion or 2 billion members. But
I didn't do anything to you, I swear.
Yeah, if it's a small cult, like the Warren Jeffs thing, then we get all pissed off. So when people say that, it's like, well, that's, but more offensive I find, and I've seen this on one Daily Show interview at least, where the woman said with a straight face, you could line up 100 doctors out of my house and I still wouldn't change my mind. And I'm like, okay, so you're an idiot and an asshole. Like, seriously, what's that about? And I would conjecture what it's about is she wants to be right, she wants to feel self-righteous, and those are very human things to want. I mean, I want to feel that too. We all do. But when you are when you're having your brain shoot dopamine into your system, and that trumps your children's safety and the community's safety, I don't give a shit how you feel. I don't care. Because, and I've told anti-vaxxers this, I'm like, I don't give a shit about you and your stupid kids and your rights. What I care about is the community, because I'm a part of it too, and you do not have the right to impose your horseshit onto the rest of us, because that has caused demonstrable harm. So I just don't I don't even do the polite, oh, well, really, tell me. I'm like, no, you're fucking wrong. It's been debunked. You're full of crap. You don't know what the hell you're talking about, and I don't feel the social obligation to even pay you the respect to pretend that I respect your right to believe this. I don't. It's dangerous, and it's a direct health risk, and fuck off.
But it's not about, oh, hang on. It's not about paying them respect, I think. If you say such things, yes, that's what you feel, and it's pretty much how I feel as well. But if you say such things like, you're going to make them shut down.
Oh,
You
you're
know?
right. You're absolutely right. I don't deny that.
So that's
Which is why it's good that I'm not actually friends with anyone who feels this way. But no, you're right. I just
no,
it's
but
it's really hard for me to maintain patience long enough to have the conversations that's required. But no, I completely agree with you. Yes, they will shut down and they'll just go away, and that doesn't make anything better.
yeah, I was gonna say it doesn't matter if they're your friends or not. If you're talking about making a difference in the community, then
No,
the
you're
way
right.
you have to speak to the people is probably going to be different. I and I'm not trying to throw you under the bus. I think
Is that what that is?
yeah, this is me not trying. If I was trying, nobody'd be 6 feet under. No, I think that one of the problems with atheism versus theism is that here's an atheist and here's a theist, and they don't understand how to communicate at all. So they
Right.
just keep doing this, and they'll keep doing this until the end of time. And if we learned how to communicate, then that would solve so much. And there
Oh,
was
I
so
agree with you.
Which is the point of this show.
Yeah, I just find it really, I find it frustrating when the culture expects me to grant a certain level of politeness, respect, whatever you want to call it, when in other contexts it would not be expected. Like if we saw someone in like on a sidewalk mercilessly beating her child, like with this, like let's just say with I don't know, with a cane, just beating like heart, like blood is spraying. We wouldn't go, gee, is that working for you as a means to discipline your child? I don't know if you. No, we wouldn't. We would go fucking stop that, and we'd like arrest that asshole. There are certain things that our culture does not tolerate, or worse. If we, and this is ridiculous, but if we saw a father bending his daughter over a trash can and fucking her, we wouldn't go. Now tell me why do you think? No, we wouldn't. We have a zero tolerance policy in the culture for that. Now, granted, I'm being ridiculous, and I know I am, and I'm being hyperbolic, but that's why I have because, and those infractions don't harm the community necessarily, not in the same way as it. So isn't it funny that the culture demands that we respect on a polite level something which has real one-to-one real-time consequences, usually death, although not always, with the community. And we're kind of all told ourselves, well, we have to communicate well. And I agree with you, by the way. Again, I agree with you. But if it's one person hurting another person in a vicious manner, suddenly it's like that great line from The Dark Knight. We send troops off to die in a war, nobody blinks an eye, but a busload of kids get hit and everybody loses their minds. And it's like, yeah, why is that? Because we've all agreed that it's okay for soldiers to die, even for something stupid, even for something we know is stupid, even, that's still totally acceptable. But if one child gets hit by a car, suddenly it's a national tragedy. Now, I'm not saying it isn't a national tragedy, but it's like, well, why aren't both of them, It's because we've all agreed that they're not both tragedies, I guess.
Some collective decision that nobody really actually consciously made. It's just that it's in the news so often that we don't really stop to think about it anymore, I guess.
Well, it's like planes and cars. I still have a slight fear of flying, just a tiny bit. And it's ridiculous because statistically it's overwhelming that you will be killed in a car than in a plane. And yet I am so used to being in a car that it doesn't even cross my mind. In fact, there was one time, I don't know, 3 months ago when we're coming off, I don't know, the freeway or something, and we hit a hard turn, very quickly turning left, and there's another car very near us, and it's not that far from a side swipe, and it crosses my mind for maybe 2 seconds that this might be the end of my life. And then instantly I'm over it. I'm like, oh, all right, well, that happened. But in a plane, we drop even 2 feet, and that sinking feeling you get in your stomach, and I'm already like, okay, well, I guess I've had a good life. It's weird. It's like, but the one is more like, because at least planes, there's not another plane about to sideswipe you. That never happens because that's what traffic control is about.
Supposedly.
Air control. Yeah, exactly. Supposedly, but it's at least in place for that. With driving, that doesn't exist. I mean, there's not like someone granting us permission to enter the freeway or granting us permission to cross into another lane. That, I mean, we do that ourselves. You know, we have the signals and stuff, but there is no infrastructure.
Wait, we have
an
signals?
independent third. Huh?
We have like turn signals and stuff. No one's told
Well,
us
right,
around here
but we
turn signals.
but we are in control of those. That's not. It's not like there's a third-party government entity whose job it is to make sure that we use them properly.
Don't give them any ideas.
No. Yeah, but it's weird, you know. It's weird that we all completely accept getting into a car. In fact, I would argue we accept so much more in cars. Like, isn't it like every New Year's there's a bunch of fatal crashes due to drunk driving? And yet, do any of us pause the next day and go, you know, maybe I should go? No. We're like, oh, that sucks, and we get back in the car. I mean, we might as well be...
Aside from this
Sorry?
New Year where I was the DD for someone, I avoid going out on New Year's. And
Oh, okay.
And passing me off to your mom, who you were actually driving for.
And, well, she was on the phone in the car, but yeah, no, I hate New Year's. Sorry. Go on.
No, and I also just realized I don't drive, so I'm kind of talking out of my ass here. But I've been in the passenger side a bunch of times.
So, kind of pulling back onto the idea that we don't think much of it when we send off a bunch of soldiers to war, but then when one kid dies, you obviously with your games experiment thing, you are a gamer in video games. And when I was growing up, there was this concept of, oh, video games encourage violence, and now now video games are supposedly numbing us to the concept that, you know, violence is going on and it's no big deal. But then we also get the very right-wingers who say that Pokemon is of the devil because they're little monsters.
Yeah, it's
Can
all
you
horseshit.
touch on all of that?
Well, I'm old enough to remember when Mortal Kombat came out, and everybody flipped their shit because it was, I don't remember what the technique's called, but you know, it's they photographed people in the traditional manner, and then they scanned that and then, you know, put it in the computer. So it, even though it was using 16-bit technology, kind of like Super Mario World, it looked
amazing,
as realistic as it could at the time. Like, that was the edge of, that was the bleeding edge of technology at the time. So for the first time in all of our lives, we saw realistic, brutal massacre on the game screen, and you could do crazy ass shit. I don't remember when it was introduced, but I quote spine ripping all the time on Twitter. I'm like, if there's no spine ripping, I don't give a fuck. And
finish him.
Yeah, no, and it's really fun shit. And I remember so many people just were like, oh my god, this is the end of the world, and it's like, well, no, it's not. And even at the time, I was like, oh, you know, maybe this does lead. But there's been study after study after study that has demonstrated that, yes, aggression levels can go up after playing a really intense game. But you know what? They can go up after sporting events. They can go up after having an argument with a spouse. They can go up after having an argument on Twitter. And yet no one's decrying the, you know, the evils of those things. I understand that people are afraid of media which takes us close to uncomfortable subjects. But what I don't understand is why we keep having to learn the same lesson over and over again. Because they said the exact same thing about comic books. They said the exact same thing about movies. They said I mean, every major revolution in media that has occurred, this has been said. And every single time there's been zero connection to depicted violence or even sexual violence and real world. And I actually, oh, I'm so glad I just thought of this. See that how I congratulated myself? I do that. I have a hypothesis which I don't have any real way to prove yet. I'm not a scientist in this regard. But my hypothesis is that interacting in simulated violence is good because it allows you to blow off steam where you otherwise might do it elsewhere. And I don't have really any evidence other than my opinion to back this up, which is why it's still a hypothesis. But I would, if I could, I would do a study where I would have, say, 10 drunk linebackers, like get them really wasted, get them into an argument, and then see what happens, or get them really wasted, and then have them sit down and play a game. I would suggest that, and it's already sounding ridiculous, but I would suggest that the ability to push that adrenaline, that rush, that I need to beat something into a game is always going to be better and probably more relaxing in the long term than doing it to another person. But like I said, it might be horseshit. I know that in my life, whenever I've ever felt like I really wanted to punch somebody, which luckily isn't that often, I'll sit down and I'll play something, and it doesn't even have to be a spine ripper. One of my favorite games is an Egyptian city building simulator called Pharaoh Cleopatra, and I can go for hours just planning the city and making it work, and it's very relaxing. So, yeah, I think it's all horseshit, and I'm really, really, really tired of politicians and parents and certain internet celebrities pretending that it's real and propagating it as if it were, and then other people supporting that because it's non-scientific and it's bullshit. And it's also not fair because it casts artists in a necessarily negative light, and blames them for things that are not their fault. Like, have you guys heard of Hatred?
Mm-mm.
Okay, it's this video game that, admittedly, when I saw the trailer, I felt pretty disturbed. It's unlike most murder simulators like Assassin's Creed or the Far Cry's or the Gods of War. There's no sense of justice. It's not, you're killing because you're in the army, or you're killing because you're trying to stop the Templars. It's you're killing because you like it. And you specifically kill civilians. And among the pieces of footage that were in there was you had a little boy on the ground, your foot to his throat, and he's begging for his life. And it's realistic. It's photoreal, and the voice is real. It sounds realistic. And he's begging you not to kill him, and you just blow his fucking head off. And that disturbed me. But you know what? I played Spine Rippers. It's like, why does one disturb me and one doesn't? It's bullshit. It's cultural made up bullshit, which is not to say that we shouldn't deal with the culture, but to use that as a means of, we shouldn't do that. The line must be drawn here. It's like, well, why? Because we suddenly feel uncomfortable? Okay, well, so did our parents and so did their parents.
Tess, I heard you say something, and
yeah,
we got lost.
Well, I was just going to say that, the video games causing violence and aggression is pretty much a non-issue.
Yeah.
I mean, we all concur about this, but the way to change that might be, well, no, because it's bullshit to just keep iterating. Yes, this is dumb. Yes, this is dumb. Yes, this is dumb.
Yeah.
How do we change it? Maybe one way to change it would be when someone starts on that tangent about how evil video games are, something positive about what video games have done in your life. I mean, I'm not a gamer, so I don't know. The farthest I go in terms of gaming is listening and watching Cry on YouTube.
Shameless plug.
Shameless plug. No, but so how do we change it aside from showing the good parts of video games?
Well, how did we change comic books and rock and roll? People got used to it.
Good point.
I mean, I have seen some of the footage and heard some of the audio and seen some of the text of, when Elvis was first big, and people, and what's so funny about it too was a lot of the allegations came true. Like, people said, this will lead to race mixing. This will make the kids have sex. This will be the end of society. Well, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. I think on some level the society will just get you. Well, look at Mortal Kombat 2. Nobody talks about it anymore because we're used to it now. In 5 years, no one will talk about Hatred anymore because Hatred 5 will be out, and not only will you kill people, but you'll fuck their skulls or something,
That's
And
uncomfortable.
I'm not even advocating for that kind of game. It's like I bring this up often. I brought this up on Games Experiment, but there's a game whose name I don't remember, but it's, get ready for it, folks. It's a rape simulator. Now, I don't want to play that. I don't know anyone who does want to play that. But I think it's good that it exists because we should have difficult, uncomfortable, or even terrifying and awful ideas because, as Dennis Miller said, and I'm not a huge fan, but he said, on the playground of open ideas, the better ideas beat the shit out of the crappy ideas. So I don't want to play that game. But you know what? If there's someone out there who does, and they're not committing any crimes, and they're willing to fork over their money, I don't have any issue with that. And it's an uncomfortable thing for people to say or hear, because our gut instinct is like, no, you know, we shouldn't even simulate rape. Yeah, I don't want to, but I would argue we shouldn't simulate blowing people's heads up with, you know, snipers, and that's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. Like, there's 5 shooters that come out every single year.
Right. There's actually,
So,
I worked at an arcade, and there was actually a stand-up arcade machine that the first thing you see on it is a giant sniper rifle, and the whole point of the game is to get as many headshots as you can. Tess, you rose your hand at some point there.
oh, sorry.
I found it funny because I was ranting to Paleo Clipper about something similar, and the fact that, like, we have all these. I'm really big into mythology, and
Yes.
and therefore also big into religion. But well, I mean, studying. Anyway, I was talking about how we always have these. We nowadays have these watered down myths that we tell the kids, and we used to have myths like where things died, the people died, the animals died, things died.
The original Little Mermaid.
The original.
Yeah.
I have a copy of Hans Christian Andersen. And I think I was talking about we should expose children to that, but so like the kind of the acceptance of the fact that more graphic ideas are out there. I'm not talking goodly. Y'all should talk, because I can't.
Well, yeah, you look at Zeus. Zeus is a fucking serial rapist and murderer. I mean, shit. Like, the golden swan. I mean, man, that boy got around, and he's the leader of the gods. I mean, what does that say about Greek culture? And we read this in I mean, that too. I think part of it is I think so much in the world is motivated by fear. Like, whenever I hear anybody say something that doesn't make sense to me, I'm like, okay, who's benefiting from this and who's afraid of what? Because I would be willing to wager that in almost every case, if not every case, it comes down to one of those two things. Like the whole climate denial thing. And I'm not a scientist, so I generally am willing to trust the overwhelming majority of scientists. But if we found out tomorrow that it was a conspiracy, I'd be like, okay, well, whatever. Like, let's deal with that. But when I see people who otherwise don't seem to have anything to gain from denying it, like, what is this about, really? And I suspect it's about the oil companies don't want us to move towards cleaner energy because that means they will make less money immediately. Now, I don't know if that's true. That might be completely crap. But that's the only thing I think of why so many politicians would publicly state that this is not a good. It's like, well, why don't we just pretend it's a good idea, and if it turned out to not be necessary, then hey, we're fine, and we have new sources of energy. So I suspect with games, with comic books, it's just people are afraid of what they don't know and what they don't understand, and what's unfamiliar and what's uncomfortable. And so if they can, peg that on something, then they will. I think that's just a human trait. I've been guilty of that. In fact, here's a great example. Like, I don't imagine you guys are fans, and I'm not a huge fan either, but when I first heard of the men's rights movement, I was like, what a bunch of shit. And I had kind of that confirmed. I went and read a piece on A Voice for Men, and I was like, yep, I'm not going to hang out with these guys. But I had Dean Esme on my show many weeks ago, and I've also spoken to him and other people, and I have to say that in terms of just discussion, in terms of me saying I disagree with you, they've been overwhelmingly easy to do that with. Now, I have heard stories that they are not that way with everyone, so I can't say anything to that. But I entered the game thinking, what a bunch of assholes who think stupid shit. And what I've left it with is what a bunch of pretty decent people who I can have a good conversation with who believe a bunch of shit. So, I'm kind of glad that I learned that much at least. And also, the whole, good ideas kicking the shit out of bad ideas. I mean, I've been an outspoken feminist my entire life, and I'm always willing to have the conversation because who knows? Maybe I'll change my name. Maybe I'll learn something. So I'm not afraid of that, but I know, or in most cases, but I know a lot of people are. It just
Did we just lose him?
I think so.
Okay. Um, let's see if I can get him back. Uh, that's a first.
I'm actually
Um,
skedaddle though.
hmm?
I'm actually gonna skedaddle.
Okay.
See ya.
See ya. Um, well then. Somehow or another, I've lost my guest, and my co-host has decided that she is very, very tired. Um, so I guess we will see if we can get Anton back. He's not responding on Facebook at the moment. I think that perhaps something glitched. Would seem so. Okay, so I guess that's the end of this episode, considering that we're having technical difficulties. We also had technical difficulties actually getting the show starting. Oh, wait! Anton is back! Maybe. Anton, can you hear me?
hello.
Hi!
Okay, I I thought my battery went out, but it just said, "Oh, this crashed," and I was like, "Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you."
Okay. Tess ran off to bed because she's had a very, very long
Oh,
day.
okay.
Um,
That's fine. I understand.
so, so yeah, I guess considering that we had the minor break there, um, there's an interesting aspect to my show that I have not seen others do, and that
Ooh.
is you get to turn the tables on me.
Oh, okay. All right. So
Go! You have 30
I
minutes.
okay. I think I know the answer to this because I stalked you and looked at a few pictures, but the paleo part,
Hmm.
is that because of the bones?
Yes, that is paleontology. Yes.
Okay. All right.
Um,
Well, okay. There we
Above my
go. Well,
head, I have a dire wolf, a saber-toothed cat, an alligator, a trilobite. Behind me,
wow.
unfortunately you can't see it in the camera shot, I have a muskrat, a Chinese water deer, a actual skull of a sandhill crane, a bobcat, a red panda, and a hummingbird. And over there I have a replica of a triceratops skull, and on top of the bookshelves I also have a woolly mammoth jaw piece.
Wow.
There's
Yeah.
also a
I.
bunch of other stuff in storage at the moment. Hello, Neo. I will get you on audio here in just a little bit.
Yeah.
Anton.
I was impressed with or I excuse me. I was immediately fascinated, and then like I was like, oh, that's right. I don't know anything about this. um. I well. Okay. How do I say? Bleh. So the form that you sent me, what I was going to say was I was very impressed with your level of professionalism because the one thing is called games experiment, but the other one is also an experiment. I just started what is now called Atheist Edited out of the blue because I felt like it, and I had no agenda. I had no like. I had like one rule, which is just I try not to publicly shit on people by complaining about them and naming them. But I've screwed that up a few times, so it's not a hard and fast rule. It's just
It
a
happens.
tendency. Yeah, and that was it's not because I want to be a tone policer. I have been in a place in the last few years in the atheist community where I'm just so sick of everyone's bullshit that I was like, you know what, I'm gonna do my best not to contribute to this. Aren't I great? But that was really the only rule. And other than that, I was like, free speech. People can say whatever the hell they want. And it was an hour. Actually, at first it was not an hour long. It was just whenever we got bored. So one was like 3.5 hours, which was
I have a
awful.
show that's almost 4.5 hours.
Wow.
That was
Oh my
before
God.
I got down to the, all right, I've got to keep this.
Yeah. So I guess what I wanted to know was how you figured that stuff out, because when I saw the fill-out sheet, I was like, this is a good idea. I probably should have done this. But all I do is I contact people and I say, hey, you want to come on? We nail down a date. I have tended to call them and say, so this is what you're up against, and then we just go. But even that kind of fell off. Like when I had Aaron Ra on, I don't think he was very available by voice. So it was all over email, and I didn't really know that he was confirmed until kind of last minute, which, I'm not blaming him for. He's a busy guy, but, it's
Right.
just the way things go. People have lives, and I'm not paying them. So, and then I sent, like, on 3 different services, I said, hey, just letting you know I'm leaving work. We're going to be on an hour. And then finally he sent me something saying, oh, yeah, everything's good. And we didn't have time to, do any prep, so we just jumped on. So I guess my question is just, how you made the decisions you made around it, if you've had any regrets, if you have changed format, if, just what has led to what. Excuse me.
Originally, I started out there was a show that I am no longer associated with that I was watching and wanted to just have an after-show discussion.
Right.
And nobody really showed up for like 30 minutes of me just kind of hanging out on screen.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden I got a gentleman whom I don't even remember his name anymore, and he was from India, and he was a diehard creationist.
Wow, interesting.
And we just went on, and about midway through, I don't know, maybe an hour after I started discussing with him, I had another person come on who I've actually had on the show, who followed more of the Vedic texts.
Right.
So more of a traditional Eastern religion philosophy. So there was an interesting, triangle of discussion going on. There was a big problem, though. Despite the fact that I was doing the broadcast live, my microphone wasn't coming over to anybody watching.
Oh, yeah, I've had that.
So I have a recording of them talking, their answers,
Right.
but you can't hear anything I said. And
Yeah.
I didn't do anything for a while after that. And then I
Yeah.
went to the debate between Matt Dillahunty and Cy. And
Oh, I haven't even seen that.
I asked a few questions during the debate, but the coat that I have on, I made and I was wearing there. And I guess because of the way I was dressed or the fact that I was talking to David Smalley and pretty much everybody else who was setting up, people assumed that I was some big-name podcaster that they just hadn't heard of.
Right.
Like, people are constantly asking me, do you have a show?
Yeah.
No, not. I finally started answering not yet.
Right, yeah.
Because it's like, well, obviously they expect me to be doing something, so I guess I should.
Yeah, I saw the pictures of you with the dill. That's what I call them. We
Yes.
go back, and Thunderfoot, and it's so funny because I think at the time everyone was happy and jolly, and then within like 3 months everyone was like, "I will kill you! No, I will kill you first! No, I will kill you before you kill me, and then I will kill you again." And I don't actually take really many sides on that. There's some people that I just do not get along with, and that's fine. That's just the way it is. But I've been a defender. Ironically, I've been more of a defender of the dill than of the Thunderfoot, because Thunderfoot has said a few things in I don't know, 2 of his videos where I was so taken aback by the amount of bullshit. And I called him on it. Not that he would give a fuck, but I wrote and said, hey, this is why this is crap. And what has been amazing to me about the personalities out there is, man, people hate it when you challenge them. And people hate it when you challenge their heroes. I mean hate.
Yeah.
I've come after people, and instantly people are like, yeah, well, have you even watched him? I'm like, yes, I have, and this is what he says, and how do you defend this? They're like, well, I don't think he meant that. I'm like, oh, really? You don't think he meant that?
I have a few of Dawkins' books over on my shelf, and I can
Right.
actually glance and see them at the moment.
Right.
Tess doesn't really like Dawkins.
Oh, interesting.
She, you kind of got the feeling already, and if you go back and watch the very first episode, I actually interviewed her,
Right.
like the legit first episode of Paleo Bytes,
Right.
and she is more of a moderate when it comes to atheism and
Right. Right. And I respect that, of course.
how we deal with things. So the
Right.
idea of how how Dawkins deals with religion and views
Right.
it as a poison, she doesn't like, and I do have to agree with her at this point. He does have some very vitriolic ways of dealing with things.
Oh, he does, yeah.
But on the same time, knowing about his background and some of the things that he's come out and said recently about how he was raised, I can't blame him for being pissed off.
Yeah.
But
Well, not only that, I mean,
I admire his work as a biologist
Right.
more than the atheism thing.
Right. I mean, I'm a huge fan of his, and I am an apologist. I admit that, but I'm also a realist, and there have been some things that he has done or said where I'm like, oh, Dickie, you need a publicist. Like, you need someone to say, Rich, do you think this is a really good idea to say this publicly, repeatedly? But that said, maybe it's a function of my age. I have so little patience for bullshit, and I get. Oh shit! I already forgot her name. Tess. I really get what she's saying. If you beat people over the head, they'll just cover their head. I'm not denying that, but there is a law currently in Idaho on the books right now being practiced where, and it used to be in Oregon and they got rid of it or something, where you can use religious faith as a legitimate excuse for having killed your child due to lack of medical help. They have restrictions around it, like if you even visit a doctor once during the child's sickness, then you cannot use that excuse. But if you cite prayer and that you prayed and that you sincerely believe that that would help, you don't have to serve any time. Now, I
already broke one mouse today. I'm not throwing this at my computer.
Yeah, and there's there's a news piece you can find about this if you just Google it. I think they're called Fellowship of Christ. I don't remember, and they're basically a cult. They live in Idaho and Oregon, and they don't really talk about it that much. And when people have asked them, well, you just let your daughter die, like what? And they just like, you know what? This is a part of our faith. This is what we believe, and they've been validated for like 50 years or something with this. And that stuff I have zero patience for. It's like, you do not have the right to let your child die because of made-up bullshit. I'm sorry, you don't, because your child also has rights. So with that stuff, I'm not interested in having a conversation with that person. I'm not interested in hearing their side of it. I am interested in putting them in fucking jail. And if they become a martyr to their group, like Warren Jeffs supposedly has been, fine. I don't have any problem with that. I have no problem with that at all. I don't have any problem with putting, I mean, he's dead now, but putting, what's the guy's name? The God Hates Fags guy.
Oh, yes. Michael Phelps.
Phelps. Fred Phelps.
Oh yeah, Fred Phelps.
I don't have any problem putting him in jail if he breaks the law. But what was so frustrating about that, I'd see, okay, this is controversial, but I actually really admired them because they were not full of bullshit. I mean, they were, but they weren't full of the having your cake and eating it too bullshit. They were like, this is what the Bible says, this is what we preach.
Yeah.
And when
this
people
is what our texts say. We're not going to water it down for you. We're not going to make it all fluffy and cuddly and super bunny cute. We're going to tell you how the hell it is, and if you don't like it, you can get the fuck out of my face.
Yeah, and I kind of I admire that because they had the courage, or they still do have the courage of their conviction. Now, I don't want to hang out with them. I don't want to be friends with them. I don't want to.
I would actually love to just go up to them and say, look, I'm not going to tell you what my view is. I want you to convince me why I should join your church.
Actually, I have kind of wanted to do that too.
I wanted to do that so bad at the Reason Rally.
Yeah.
And you see who I got distracted by.
Yeah. But when they won the case in the Supreme Court of the right to picket soldiers' funerals as
Yeah,
long as
that
it
kind
was
of
on.
upset me.
Yeah, and okay, now I'm not a soldier. I don't really have any of my family, but I absolutely respect what they do, and I respect that they do what I am too much of a coward to do, and I respect our, sort of cultural obligation to show our appreciation at a funeral. But I respect the First Amendment a whole lot more. Granted, troops exist to defend the First Amendment. I understand that, but I'm actually really glad they said that because it was like, had we said, well, okay, we're gonna make an exception, it's like, well, where does that end? And that's like with the Hobby Lobby case. Once we established in law that you can use your religion as an excuse to fuck your employees, I don't see where that ends.
Yeah.
And I think we really fucked ourselves with that one
Yeah.
because it's
And
actually.
I actually had applied to a Hobby Lobby that was close to me when I lived in
Oh,
Tennessee probably 4 times. I was like,
that's
I can
funny.
deal with the crucifixes, I can deal with
Right.
the music playing. I'm a really crafty person. Like I said, hell, I made the jacket I'm wearing. I sell
Right.
jewelry online. Um, I can deal with this. But
Yeah.
once that ruling came down, I now have an issue stepping foot in the local Hobby Lobby down here in Florida
Right.
because I'm like, I really don't want to give these people my business,
Yeah.
but I also don't want to pay $5 for shipping on an
Yeah.
$8 marker either that
Well,
I
see,
can only get there.
yeah, that's where I'm lucky because I had never heard of them before that case. Literally had never heard of them. And actually, Chick-fil-A, I had only heard of them a year before that case. I'd never, and the only reason was I happened to walk by,
Damn
and
good chicken though.
well, I'm vegetarian, vegan-ish, so
Oh,
I don't even bother with that. But but I had never heard of them until about a year before the controversy, and the only reason I did hear of them was I happened to walk by an under construction restaurant in LA, and I was like, Chick-fil-A, what the fuck is that? And that was the last thing that was the sum total of my thought of Chick-fil-A until I didn't know anything about their history, I didn't know anything about their founder, nothing. And then it was like, oh, they're assholes. Oh, okay, I got it. But I don't eat there anyway, and I have no desire to, so it's
their
like,
French
okay.
fries taste like grass.
Oh well,
I'm
so
not
does
kidding. For
wheatgrass.
some reason, their French fries, the smell of fresh cut grass, that's what their French fries taste like.
That
I've
sounds
never
awful.
been able to figure this out.
God, that's weird.
It is so weird. But so I know that Mike was wanting to come on um, and actually say something because he popped in a minute
Yeah, I
ago.
saw that, and I was wondering what was
Um,
going on. It was craziness.
well, what it is you said that you were perfectly good with having call-ins, and
Oh yeah,
I had scheduled the posts, and then unfortunately because of the
yeah, the debacle.
right, so I'm going to see if he will come on again. You were wondering about about the forms and whatnot, though, and we kind of
Yeah,
diverted from that. The form concept actually came in. I originally had a small subset of my just personal Paleo Clipper website, which is
right,
kind of a hub where I have my art and everything on. I had a
right.
little tiny form that was from Weebly, and I had to pay, I don't know, like $79 for a year to host so that I could get more options. And I wasn't really willing to pay that. I commission art from other people as well as do freelance art myself. And
Oh, okay.
one of the people that I would get art from, whenever you would get a commission from them, you had to fill out this big long form to let them know, okay, this is where you can email me, this is where you're going to send the PayPal info, and this is what I want in it is a general, mature, adult content, whatever. Um,
Right.
and at the very bottom, it was like, oh, this is a Google's form. I'm like, I wonder how easy this is to do. It is amazingly easy to do.
Right.
And then there's a little plugin that you install that whenever anybody actually fills out and then submits the form, I get an email saying, hey, somebody said hello to you and wants to be on the show. So I just go and
Oh,
look at
okay.
that, and then in order to organize my actual like behind the scenes thing, I use a website called Trello. Um,
Oh.
and that was introduced to me by somebody who they used to use it in the church that they were a former member of.
Oh.
And that's how they organized everything.
Hey, if it's useful, it's useful.
Yep. So I was introduced to Trello from that. I'm no longer with that group, but I still use the thing because it is freaking handy.
Oh, cool.
I've got like 4 or 5 different little columns of like, this is the person
Right.
who's tentatively booked for this day. These are the people that I really want to get on. I doubt I'll ever be able to get them on because they're big name people, but I can try.
You know, I've actually found that much, much easier. Like, when I wrote to Aaron, we had never spoken. And I just said, hey, this is who I am, this is what I do, love to have you on. And I didn't expect him to write back or anything because he's very busy and very famous and very beloved. And he did, within like 2 days, actually, I think, or maybe even a day. And I was so shocked, I didn't know what to do. I was like, oh, shit. And then in the gaming world, if you get a chance, I think like 3 episodes ago, we had a special edition, because everyone's a special edition, with Christina Sommers, who's been heralded in the Gamergate community, if that can even be called a community, and people in general. Like, I think people really appreciate her matter of factness. And I wrote to her, and I just wrote to an address I found, said, hey, love to have you on. I didn't apologize and say like, oh, we're a tiny thing, nobody really cares. I just said, hey, we'd love to do it, and she agreed readily. It took a while to schedule it, but it was like, and one of my followers was like, how the hell did you get her? I was like, I just asked her. I mean, I find that if we act like people are better than they are, then we will be treated that way,
Right.
But if we act like they're people, then and there have been people that I've invited on Atheist Edited who one person said no, just flat out. At least 5 people have either ignored me or I just never, I never hear from them, and that's fine. I don't do it for a living, so, and same with Games Experiment. I sent out like 3 invites to game developers that I admire and just didn't hear anything. So you just move on to the next one. I mean, that's the thing is, what someone was difficult around some of that, and I didn't tell her this, but I was like, well, if you don't come on, someone else will. I mean, I can throw a rock and find 100 interesting people to do this, so fuck off. And I didn't say fuck off. I didn't want to be mean, but it was like she gave me a lot of guff in the last possible minute, and it was like, oh, you got to be kidding me. So, and then I just ignored her on Facebook, and I don't need to say shit about her. It's fine. It's nothing personal. It's like I'm not going to waste my time then, because if you can't be bothered to be decent to me, then I'm just going to ignore you. And luckily that only happened once, but yeah.
That's good.
Yeah,
and I hate that happened to you. Then of course you were also asking about the format of the show. Sorry, I'm trying to. My mind goes off in 10,000 different directions and then goes.
Yes.
It's not that I'm not paying attention to you. I
understand.
The concept of how I came up with the format of the show, I actually smashed a couple different shows together.
Oh, okay.
To come up with the concept. Of course, there's a lot of shows out there that they're like, okay, we're going to interview so and so. I mean,
right.
You have that concept as well.
Yeah.
The show that kind of got me into the idea of, okay, I'm going to do an interview show was actually Ask an Atheist and the Atheist Experience.
Yeah, no, I know both of those. Actually,
right,
Ask an Atheist is how I discovered Medisa Thomas of Black Nonbelievers, because she happened to be interviewed, and I was like, oh, I like this lady. I should write to her.
So those were the 2 that it was like, okay, I kind of like this idea of an interview style show.
Yeah.
And then the Seth with the Thinking Atheist
right.
Was the idea of, well, I can have a nice, smooth conversation with somebody.
Right. Yeah.
Dogma Debate was the idea of, why don't we have not just an interview with people, but actually have a full-on, I'm going to talk with you and have a legit conversation, and you can give me feedback too, and if you want to ask me something, go right ahead.
See,
This
this is why
is
my laziness is bad, because that's so much. No, seriously, like because I'm only the 300 trillionth most popular channel on YouTube, and I realized very early on, like, this was not going to change. Nobody gives a shit, and I don't even look at the numbers, because the few times that I have, I'm like, oh, I think my mom and my brother watch this. Actually, that's not really true. They wouldn't. Um,
right.
but I thought, well, okay, there's only so many factors involved in this. There's format, there's there's other stuff, there's subject. So I came to the crippling conclusion that I'm probably not that interesting, and the format's probably not that interesting, and it's certainly not gimmicky. Like, it's just me talking to people, and so I selfishly just said, I like talking to people. That's it. And I even asked myself, well, how is that different from anything else out there? And I was like, it's not. I don't care. I'm going to ignore that, because I don't know how to. I don't want to come up with, like, this week on Atheist Edited, we punch ourselves
Right.
in the face just to test if it can hurt. Like, it's nah. I just want to talk to people, and if people want to watch it, cool. If they want to listen, cool. If they don't, then I guess it's just me and someone else.
Right. And that's more or less how I feel about this show is it's like, well, the the final like clicking point
Yeah.
is the name of the show, Paleo Bytes, and it is
Yeah.
actually a pun.
Right.
I mean, the spelling is actually for computer byte,
Right.
but biting we see as the pro-evolutionists, the
Yes.
creationists constantly putting out, well, what about this? What about that? Let's reuse this argument from the 1920s.
Yeah.
Um, but you know what? I actually kind of want to bite down on those little bits of trap that they put out there. I want to
Yeah.
talk to them. I want to
Oh yeah, absolutely.
understand why you think that way. Not, I want to bash your face in because you believe this. I want to
Yeah.
understand why in the world you think this is right.
That's actually why I like to watch Fox News, not ironically. I really enjoy seeing people's thought processes and, like, how do they arrive? Oh, okay, so this is a
Right.
weird Irish thing for him.
And then of course when I have people who are like-minded like you are, I want to know how you got to the point that you're at, what
Right.
made your mind change, and also expose that there are some things that even we as atheists will probably try to strangle each other for.
Well, that's been made evident in the last few years. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've had famous and less famous people pretty much just call me dog shit because I'm like, well, wait, how do you know that? And yeah, it's really well, and that's why I actually tweeted not too long ago that atheists hate being challenged, and I stand by that. I bumped into so many people like, well, it's obvious. It's like, how is this reasoning any different from what a fundamentalist Christian would say? And I'm sure I'm guilty of this too. There are certain things, like the whole feminism thing. So many of my acquaintances are either non-feminist or they're actually anti-feminist, and
Yeah.
and I have those conversations because I'm not afraid of it. And when people say, oh, like the thing that was going on for a while, feminism poisons everything. I'm like, well, I think that's horseshit, but I want to know why they think that.
Right.
And what it's basically come down to, as far as I can tell, is there are some people who are fucking crazy and who call themselves feminists. And the problem with language is anyone can call anyone anything.
Yep.
And, obviously a doctor, it's illegal to call yourself a doctor if you haven't actually earned the license, but nobody owns the word feminist. Nobody owns the word atheist. So if someone says something like toxic masculinity leads to school shootings, she has every right to say that. But I have every right to say that's a bunch of crap, and this is why. So I've spent actually quite a bit of my time on Twitter, at least, going like, especially when people are like, oh, gamers are all misogynists. I'm like, well, I'm a gamer. I'm not a misogynist. So where are you getting this? But usually people are like, fuck off. I don't want to talk to you. I'm like, all right, well, I can't make you, so.
Okay then.
So yeah. Yeah, what can you do? What can you do? I mean, I think it's people. Us people are usually pretty smart. We usually know our shit on at least one thing, and so we're used to being validated on at least one thing. So
Right.
when it comes to other things, we bristle. But honestly, I think it's just a human thing. I think there's a certain social dominance to being perceived as being right, and social dominance feels good. We get dopamine or something when that happens. So, like I heard rumors of the Dill and Thunder maybe debating each other, and the way in which both of them talked about it, I thought this really isn't any different from a pissing contest, because the Dill's got his fans who hate Thunderfoot, Thunderfoot's got his fans who think that the Dill turned his back on them. I'm pretty much in the middle. I like both of them.
Right, same here.
And I don't worship either of them. But it's like it's really interesting to me how that it became so competitive and so vitriolic so quickly. Actually, vitriol might be a little strong, but
no, I get what you mean. I've met both of them.
I saw that.
Yeah, Matt is a really cheerful guy, but he's worked to the bone.
Yeah.
Which resulted in him being a little bit short-tempered. But at the same time, he was in the same goddamn room as Cy Ten Brugengate. And really, I'm pretty damn patient when it comes to people. I really am. I try to be. That man is so infuriating. It's not a stage persona with him.
Right.
Cy is an asshole. There is, in fact, I will go so far as to violate one of my own rules for my show. There is one word that I do not allow on the show for guests to call me or use, but I will violate it on my own accord. Cy is a cunt.
Oh, I knew you were going to say that one.
Yes. I reserve that word for very specific people, and that's what that guy is.
That's so funny.
The only thing I could find myself willingly talking to him about was his multi-language thing. The fact that he could be multilingual. That's the only thing that I could see myself talking to him about. And I did for a little while. I tried to have a civil conversation with him. So I can completely understand why Matt was snippy that day.
Well, and I haven't even seen that because it's no slag against Matt. I have so little interest in watching. It took me like 6 months to watch the Bill Nye versus.
And see, I was watching that live.
Yeah, I don't know. I like that they do it. I think what Matt does is a good thing. I think what Bill Nye does is a good thing. But it's always the same horse shit that they pull out, and I don't need to watch the same thing essentially over and over and over again. I'll make exceptions here and there, but it's like I actually that's why years ago I said on my now semi-retired site that I basically had stopped listening to atheist podcasts because, one, there was a bunch of bullshit going around that no one was willing to honestly address, which is fine, they don't have to, but that means I don't have to listen. And the other was that everyone was kind of saying the same thing, and I hold myself in that. If I were listening to me, I'd probably be like, okay, well, whatever. So I unsubscribed from a bunch of stuff. I was just like, I think I'm done. And I have yet to feel regret about it because I don't feel like I'm missing anything. And that's just my opinion. Maybe there's a bunch of great shit that's gone down the last few years on some of the more popular podcasts, but I kind of doubt it. Everyone has the same guests.
Go check out Dogma Debate.
Yeah. Everyone has the same guests. Everyone talks about the same shit, and there were some trends going through that just kept going and going and going that either I completely disagreed with and I felt like my opinion was not being heard from anyone, or I just didn't care. And that's fine. Like, they can talk about it, and I don't have to care. Those both can exist at the same time, but that means that I don't need to listen. And that's the thing. Like, I never felt the need to pronounce, like, I'm not going to listen to X podcast anymore because they're full of shit, and this is why. I was like, well, what's that going to accomplish? Like, someone will find that and get all pissed off, and then it'll be, harangued for days on end with hate mail, or I could just not mention it and say I'm cutting down. And I don't like being harangued.
I can completely understand that. Well, we've got 5 roughly minutes left to the show.
I'm so glad you said that because I was actually going to say I'm going to have to go in about 8 minutes.
Okay. Well, how about this? I've got 2 last questions for you.
Sure.
And then we'll go ahead and end the show. My first question. The video game that you will go to every single time when you just need something to relax. What is it?
God, that is tough. Two things popped in my head which probably aren't accurate. Any Super Mario, probably Galaxy, and then the thing I've been playing recently, Pharaoh. But I love a lot of games. RE4 is in there, Eternal Darkness is in there, but you asked for one, so we'll say Mario.
Okay.
Yes.
My answer is Tetris, curiously enough.
Oh, that is a good. I should have said that.
I will sit there mindless.
Oh, yeah, that's great. I mean, it's such a simple game, and yet it's so challenging after level 3 for me.
If I fail at level 3, I'm like, what the hell is wrong with me?
I know. Well, I that's why I have not a show exactly. It's more of just a silly thing I do on my YouTube channel called Terrible Gaming, which is a hashtag I use on Twitter because I figured, hey, why not broadcast? I'm actually a really awful gamer. I finish few games. I'm good at fewer games, but I love doing it. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to publish my embarrassments to the world and just like, oh, here's where I sucked at this. Oh, here's where I completely missed this part that I should have gotten. So yeah, not getting past level 3 is pretty common for me in any game.
So then the other thing is more of a statement. You have a show. Plug it.
Yes. Okay. So currently, although schedules will probably change soon, every Tuesday at about 7:30 p.m. Pacific is the Atheist Edited Show. I talk to people I like, admire, or otherwise find interesting. Some famous, some not so. All are welcome. I don't have to agree with you. It's about an hour, and we just chat. It's casual chat. So that's Tuesdays. Thursdays is, and this also might change, Games Experiment. It's about video games, board games, etc. Usually video games. 7:30 p.m. Same thing, an hour. It's much more loose. We sometimes have guests, but it's not just a one-to-one. It's me and other people, and we just talk. So those happens whenever. Unboxing, unwrapping happens whenever, so there's no schedule to that. And all of this can be found at youtube.com/Anton A. Hill, all one word. And any announcements can be found on Twitter at Anton A. Hill. And everything else I have is either semi-retired or nobody gives a shit. So.
Fair enough.
Yes.
All right then. I'm going to let you go to bed.
Okay, well, I gotta go eat, but
well,
yeah.
eat. Yeah, it's like 10 o'clock for me. So for me, it's bed.
It is bed, yes. Excuse me.
All
well,
right.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And
you're welcome.
Yes, I'd love to see this out there. Wow, I don't know what the fuck that was.
Well, go yell at people, tell them you were on here, and tell them, hey, you can get your voice heard too. Because
excellent. Yeah.
The big name people, I'm going to do very sparsely. I want to hear the little people. I want to give you guys a chance to get your voice out.
Well, I appreciate that, because, yeah, the bigger names don't seem to care, because when one can be a celebrity, one often is one, and then, hey, power, pussy, and coke. I can't say that I would turn those down. Well, the coke, but...
Yeah.
Just up the nose. The only thing I like there is oxygen. I don't know why. I don't know why people do that.
I'm going to end the show on that note. I'm going to end the show on that note.
Okay. All right.